You're listening to Reality Radio Network, located at www.realityradionetwork.com. Coming up next is The Victor Thorne Show, and now here's your host, Victor Thorne.
I'd like everyone to think about the following concepts for a minute. AIDS is a man-made disease. AIDS is a creation of the very government that is supposed to watch out for its people. The AIDS virus used to obliterate certain segments of the population in a brutal form of genocide. Can you think of anything that could be more sinister and downright evil? But wait a second. You say it's not possible? That there's no way our government could have deliberately created and disseminated the AIDS virus? Well, hang on tight, because tonight's guest, Dr. Boyd Graves, might make you think differently by the time this show is over. Here's a man who is finally blowing the lid of secrecy off of this subject. So, please welcome Dr. Boyd Graves. This is the Victor Thorne Show with my co-host, Lisa Giuliani. How you doing, Dr. Graves?
You know, I'm kind of still strapping the seatbelt loose here. We've had an up and down kind of day on this issue, the laboratory origin of AIDS, and it's good talking with you guys. And how are things there in Pennsylvania?
Still snowy. Cold.
Well, we're getting a little blustery storm here in San Diego, but we certainly can't complain. But we had an earthquake over the weekend. I don't know if you guys knew that or not.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, we had an earthquake over the weekend. I think it preceded the earthquake that we had here today in the federal court, because the lawsuit against the United States is going to go forward. On this issue here, we have the U.S. Special Virus Program and the flowchart of a secret federal virus development program that paralleled the onset of HIV/AIDS and suddenly ended in 1978, just as HIV/AIDS began.
Mm-hmm. Well, why don't you update us on what happened today, and we'll take it from there.
Sure, and I appreciate that, because as this thing is unfolding, here we are on the cutting edge, and I am grateful this evening to actually be here on your show with these kinds of things happening. Seemingly every day now we're getting progress in our direction. But basically the court today granted the right to proceed in this case without the prepayment of costs. It sounds like a nice term, but in essence, you don't pay the filing fee. However, that was a hurdle that had stopped us previously, where the judge errantly used a section of the law that allowed her to dismiss the case at the onset as being frivolous. We have crossed that hurdle today. The United States will be compelled to answer the lawsuit and defend the allegations of the laboratory birth of HIV/AIDS via the U.S. Special Virus Program. And there is the difference that we have, you guys, in this sense. We are talking about reviewing the federal program, the U.S. Special Virus Program, that no other AIDS expert in the world is talking about today. And we have a problem with that.
And what's the problem?
Well, put it in layman's terms. 10 years ago, I tested positive for HIV. And I decided not to sit on my thumbs and wait another year and a half and die. And I thought the best approach might be to figure out the genesis of this pandemic. And over the last 10 plus years or so, as the trail began to grow more deeply, if you would, in this direction towards the United States, as more and more documents became available, even sworn congressional testimony that the United States was making a synthetic biological agent for which no natural immunity could have been acquired, one that would deplete the immune system so as to allow for the onset of infectious disease. What year do you think that testimony is from?
I don't know. What year?
That is June 9, 1969.
Okay, because I have some information here. Would that be before the Congress?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That is sworn congressional testimony.
Okay. Would that be from a man in the military, MacArthur?
Absolutely. You have that testimony there?
Yes, a Dr. Donald M. MacArthur.
That June 9, 1969 testimony has not been addressed by the United States because it clearly states the United States is making a synthetic, and synthetic is artificial, correct?
Right. Well,
man-made artificial. Something synthetic is artificial. They are making an artificial biological agent, correct?
Correct.
One for which no natural immunity could have been acquired, correct?
Correct.
One that depletes the immune system so as to allow for the onset of infectious disease.
And then he also said, within the next 5 to 10 years, it would probably be possible to make a new infective microorganism which would differ in certain important aspects from any known disease-causing organism.
Absolutely.
So different than anything that's ever been made before.
Well, that's why they have a problem calling HIV a virus in its general sense. Because it isn't really a virus. It's actually a mycoplasma, and I think you've probably heard that word before.
Yes, I have. It's going around a lot as far
lately.
As chemtrails, too.
Well, chemtrails has an affiliation because this federal virus program, the U.S. Special Virus, began officially in 1962. However, shortly following World War II, they did population projections, and there's a memo from the United States State Department, which is February 12, 1948, where George W. McKinnon, in that Foreign Policy Statement 21, states in 1948 that, cut with the niceties, we've got to devise a scheme to deal with the burgeoning populations of the Third World.
Dr. Graves, the government knew in 1898 that mycoplasma could cause epidemic, and in the early 1900s they caused it in fowl and in horses. So, what is the role mycoplasma plays in epidemic disease like AIDS?
Yes, and thank you. That because Lisa, that is on point with the kind of information that we're trying to share around the world. In the timeline that we have on the website boydgraves.com, we take the development of HIV back to a U.S. mandated laboratory of hygiene. I guess you've seen my timeline, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oddly enough, the origin, and I hope that our listening audience has their pens out, because it's very, very helpful to, this information is so shocking and startling at the same time that it's important, since it is verifiable, for people to make an attempt to do so. What you find with HIV and trying to trace its origins, because I thought that would be the best way to defeat this thing. If I knew where it came from, that would be the best way to defeat it. And certainly, we were all heard that it was an African and a monkey and a steward and all the gays in the world. Right?
That's what they say.
Yes, that's what they said. And without evidence of anything to the contrary, we had to accept that, didn't we?
That's true.
Yes. What the lawsuit is about here in the federal court, the blind scales of justice have to decide between the official documents of the U.S. Special Virus Program coupled with the congressional sworn testimony, as you have there yourself as well, in one tray, and in the other tray, you have the, I guess, propaganda of a African monkey origin, because we've got official U.S. documents, correct?
That's
Yes.
correct.
I have a question.
Now, I'd like to just address the mycoplasma issue just a little bit more because it is so very important. You find mycoplasmas at the heart of HIV and AIDS. And from the science citations perspective, there is a 1995 science paper that has not been refuted that indeed says mycoplasmas regulate the ability of HIV to bud from one cell to another. That aspect of budding, i.e. how it kills a cell and then leaves that cell and goes to another cell. Are you following me here?
Uh-huh.
This aspect of budding, what that means, how a tumor develops. A tumor develops by colonization. It kills one cell, it colonizes the next cell. It kills that one, colonizes the next one. Are you following me?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you've got a little spot or a growth, right?
Right.
HIV does exactly what. Well, cancer is a virus, by the way, and now how come they haven't told us? Anybody ever tell you that yet?
No.
Okay, Victor?
No, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, cancer is a virus, and basically what you have here with HIV is that the mycoplasma carrier has been altered. Bioengineering. Of course, here you have a flowchart that says we're making a special virus. There you have congressional testimony that says we're making a synthetic biological agent that's going to deplete your immune system.
Well, why don't we...
Yet we can't draw the connection. Now, why can't the congressional persons there in Pennsylvania, the senatorial persons, the health staffer for each of their offices tomorrow respond to our call for review of the U.S. Special Virus Program?
So you're saying that mycoplasmas are at the heart of the U.S. biological warfare program?
Absolutely. I'm not saying that, Lisa. This federal program is saying that. Because if you haven't seen the cover of the program yet, there are 3 6-sided mycoplasmas at the forehead of the cover on these programs, on these progress reports.
So why is the U.S. government fixated on genocide?
This venue of genocide kind of goes back a ways, and it came into view it came center focus after World War II, okay, now that we're not going to fight anymore, that means we're going to have a lot more people, and, we as a country, became very accustomed to the term baby boom, correct?
Right.
Yeah. It didn't just happen here, the baby boom. But it happens, all over the world as it did because the world wasn't fighting any longer. But the population projections were such that populations would have to be stabilized. And what you find is this is written into the public law of the United States. It's Public Law 91-213. Public Law 91-213, signed by Richard Nixon on March 16, 1970. Now people need to go and look it up, correct? Yeah, the Public Law 91-213 kind of puts into place the U.S. policy of population stabilization, population control. However, they had already been developing the AIDS virus for a number of years at that point. Once they got closer to its development, then you saw the U.S. policy decisions go into high gear beginning in April 1969. I think Dr. Lynn Horowitz covers this point in his he's got a number of gems in his book, but the conference at Fort Detrick on April 4th and April 5, 1969, the conference was entitled Entry and Control of Foreign Nucleic Acid.
Well, this is a good place, I think, that we should really start in and maybe put the timeline together. I have some points here from a paper that I wrote a year or so ago. In 1968, there was a Club of Rome study called Global 2000, where there was a Dr. Aurelio Pizzi who founded the Club of Rome.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
What's that?
I'm familiar with the Global 2000.
Okay, and
but it comes out in a number of you see it in a number of U.S. Policies, if you would, particularly as it relates to population, of course, the Global 2000. But it's pretty well supported by the Council for Foreign Relations and Trilateral Commission and Club of Rome and the Committee of 300 and all of those elitist type organizations that many say are indeed running the entire scenario. That article and that point you're making there from the time perspective is correct. I do believe that there was the same kind of thing done in 1957 where
in Huntsville, Alabama.
In 1957?
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. The timeline is this: that if you say 1948 to 1978 for the U.S. Special AIDS Virus Program, you're correct. Now, the government has a problem because they roped themselves into a corner on two occasions. One is the report that they issued last year that is absolutely bogus with respect to the origin of AIDS, and the other is this venue that there was a 1957 case of HIV. 1959 case of HIV, correct?
Yeah, that's false though.
Pardon me?
as false that
Yeah, I can hardly hear you, and I know we're doing an odd hookup. So yeah, of course. But I was highlighting that to say that what the people are saying is this: we are saying there is no case of HIV prior to the February 12, 1948 memo authorizing the pursuit of population stabilization as it relates to memorandum Foreign Policy Statement number 21 written by George W. Buchanan. So that's our position. So, well, if there was a case in 1959, that doesn't cut it, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Right, because we also find, and the history record shows, and, you know, people need to go look and see for themselves. We do have on the website, boydgraves.com, a number of comments, or reviews, if you would, from a number of scientists and medical doctors and professors who are familiar with some of the progress reports of this secret program. I think their comments are pivotal.
We have a comment from a listener. He has some questions for you. He says, although the focus of the show tonight is about its origin, I'd like to ask what Dr. Graves thinks is the ultimate purpose and possible future of these engineered diseases to have as an arsenal for future wars, for worldwide eugenics. What do you believe is the goal of the perpetrators?
Well, yes, and thank the listener for asking.
Night Knot is his name.
I'm sorry?
Sir Night Knot.
I appreciate that. Here's where this is going. Victor, you mentioned the Global 2000. We believe that that is a elitist plan of global population reduction to the tune of some 2 billion people. Is that your thinking?
Well, it all falls in line that it's not only the AIDS virus with once you bring in abortion also, and you still bring in the scattered wars throughout the world, that this is the three of them fall in line. That this is, instead of having massive wars and massive deaths like World War II, World War I, they have to do it in a different framework, and this is one of their modus operandi is to do it.
Yeah, this issue of biological weaponry. For the record, it is November 1970. The official publication of the United States Army, and the subject was ethnic weapons, and that was 1970, November 1970. They're going to continue this field of biological weaponry. There is certainly no doubt about that. But what many of us have a problem with is this: that beginning in 1942, when Roosevelt named George W. Merck to be the biological czar, in essence, to, okay, the United States is going to develop biological weaponry because if we get attacked with biological weaponry, we're going to respond with biological weaponry. And certainly in that sense, to respond in kind, that ideology makes sense, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right. However, since 1942 to the present, the United States cannot explain the plethora of science experimentation, biological recombination on people of color. As if to say that the prime enemy, the prime intellectual biological enemy of the United States are people of color. And we believe that that is wrong.
Well, let's get right down to the nitty-gritty here. Where was the AIDS virus created?
Well, again, you say you're getting to the nitty-gritty. The AIDS virus is the designer virus of the U.S. Special Virus Program.
Mm-hmm.
There are 15 400-page progress reports of the program from 1963 to 1978. What you find as the origin of AIDS is this. The original name of HIV/AIDS is leukemia lymphoma virus. Not all that other HCL stuff. This was HT leukemia lymphoma virus. And that's according to the co-discoverers, Dr. Gallo and Montagne. We have a 1984 paper from them. Are you following me?
Mm-hmm.
So, if we can cover that point again, it's very important. The original name of HIV is what?
Go ahead.
What did I just say?
Leukemia lymphoma.
Leukemia lymphoma virus, correct?
Yes.
On page 2 of the 1971 progress report of this program, the United States concedes they are seeking to combine a leukemia and a lymphoma to make one candidate human virus.
I have another question from a listener.
I'm going to take that question just a little bit further because have you seen the flow chart? You guys have it yet?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, we're approaching 60,000 people on the ticker on the website at boydgraves.com. Anyone can go there even now and download the flow chart of this secret program. But, of course, we've been, sending them out, in the mail as well. We have 60,000 people who now hold this document, which 4 years ago no one had ever seen before. Now, people may have seen it and certainly didn't want to talk about it, those who were involved in the program. But 60,000 people now have this mycoplasma development flowchart that shows the research logic, and it says it is the research logic. And if this government wanted to find out how we made HIV and how it was put together, why aren't we reviewing the files of the etiology area of the National Cancer Institute, which is on the cover of the progress reports, along with the 3 6s, the 3 6-sided mycoplasmas, and the humanoid figure, and the beaker, the laboratory beaker, and on the other side of the diagram, you find the rat, the mouse. HIV is part mouse mammary tumor virus, murine mammary tumor virus. How is HIV connected to a rat breast cancer? Mr. Thorne.
I think, is it because it's refractory, it's resistant, as cancer is?
No, HIV has
Well, the AIDS virus, the AIDS itself is refractory, it's resistant to treatment.
No. The HIV enzyme is in its nucleotide sequences, is what I'm speaking of.
Okay.
Some of those sequences are from a rat breast cancer disease. And on the cover, before they go to the mycoplasmas, on the cover of this program is this rat figure, and then you see the mycoplasmas with an arrow going towards the person. And so the cover of the programs is really where we should be concentrating, because mycoplasmas are 6-sided figures without a cell wall, and you can insert into the mycoplasma whatever type of viral condition you were trying to achieve. As it is with HIV, you have a mycoplasma that has a visna inserted into it as well. Are you familiar with visna, V-I-S-N-A?
Yeah, that's from the sheep.
An Icelandic sheep disease, right?
Yeah, the sheep visna virus.
Well, yeah, so one of the questions that the United States will have to answer in depositions and as well as on the stand is how does a disease that allegedly originates in Africa have 30% of its sequences from an Icelandic sheep disease? Mr. Thorne.
Right. Well, let me
No, let's address that issue. How does HIV have 30% of its sequences from an Icelandic sheep disease if HIV is a result of interaction between an African and a monkey?
Well, how is the government going to answer that?
How are you going to answer that, sir, so that we can get through the lunacy of what we've been doing this evening? How lunatic it is that we could have 30% of the DNA of HIV or the nucleotide sequences of HIV to come from an Icelandic sheep disease, and we think it is because somebody in Africa did something with a monkey that got transferred through an airline stewardess, that people who engage in certain behaviors get this disease. When in fact it's come from our government.
Inconceivable.
Inconceivable. How is 30% of the nucleotide sequences of HIV from the Icelandic sheep disease visna? This is a question that we are going to be asking Congresswoman Susan Davis tomorrow, because we believe that the GAO investigation that was conducted last June thoroughly whitewashed this entire investigation, because at issue before the GAO in their investigation for Congressman James Trafficant, who was then thrown in jail, was, and as they state, the belittling statement by the General Accounting Office that an individual has alleged that HIV has evolved from the sheep disease visna, as if I were some individual off the street. Before segregation genocide. This is the kind of attitude this government has while it maintains a secret holocaust of people, a holocaust of innocent people. By now we're carrying this fista, a sheep wasting disease.
Dr.
Nazi Germany.
Have you brought this information to black leaders like Jesse Jackson, to Reverend L., to Louis Farrakhan? Have you brought it to any of these individuals, Maxine Waters, and showed them this evidence?
To the person there. They have all turned their heads. Their contrived silence and inaction shows that indeed we have nothing but foxes guarding the hen house.
That's awful.
Yep, that's awful.
Well, Len Horowitz aligns himself with the Nation of Islam, but yet neither the Nation of Islam or Len Horowitz has uttered the words, the U.S. patented cure for AIDS. Patent number 5676977. In 1997, the United States patented a cure for AIDS. Tetracell is the product name, AG404, the composition, silver 4, oxygen 4. Now, Dr. Horowitz has proclaimed himself to be the numero uno AIDS origin investigator in the world. He has credentials in that capacity. His book, Emerging Viruses, is probably one of the finest books on this issue. Yet, we can't find Dr. Horowitz speaking on the patented cure for AIDS. You can't hold yourself out to be the great white hope for black people, and you know that there is a cure for the condition of the people in the countries that you're getting money for to speak for, and you're not telling them about the cure. Now, which is it? Are you following me?
Could you give that patent number again?
The AIDS cure patent. Patent number 5676977. We believe that the United States has an obligation to the people of this country and to the people of the world to begin an immediate double-blind study of the Tetracell cure for AIDS.
Dr. Graves, when I was in respiratory therapy, we had a lot of AIDS patients that came down with a form of, I believe it was pneumonia, called Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Does that sound familiar? Is that correct?
What is your question?
Well, I'd like to know if this cure could help patients with that.
With a specific condition of AIDS?
Yes.
Ma'am, what we're doing here, Lisa, is this. We're saying that here's the federal program that made HIV/AIDS. We're saying that here in phase 4A, here are the antidotes the government worked on before they released it. We're saying that here in 1997 is the cure patented.
What I want to know.
Patented by the United States. What I am doing, ma'am, is putting out the information to the best of my ability. I hold a law degree, and I'm in my 4th year as an International Medical Research Director for the International Medical Research Foundation, Common Cause. And on this specific issue of HIV/AIDS and its origin, I hold myself out as thinking that after 11 years and a degree from Annapolis that I think I almost know what I'm talking about. But I don't like to overextend because I think we have a duty to challenge the medical and science professions to come to the table. Thus far, they have been silent on this federal program. Thus far, they have been silent on the U.S. patented cure for AIDS. And we ourselves can't pull our hair out trying to do their job. They need to do their own job.
Well, who specifically from the government is going to appear in the courthouse opposite you?
1 minute to break, Victor.
Well, what we have is...
Dr. Graves, we have about 1 minute till break. So
absolutely. What we have is it's an indictment against the United States in this regard. Key people would have to be in key positions for this secret federal virus program to work and for the U.S. propaganda to assist in covering for the program. You find Dr. Alan S. Rapson, Deputy Director of the National Cancer Institute, who has thwarted the investigation. Well, we find Dr. Rapson was in the program. He's an AIDS developer. He's chief amongst the defendants with respect to this lawsuit.
Super. Well, we're going to go to break here in a few seconds. So when we come back, we'll continue with this subject and look a little bit more into the origins of AIDS and continue from there.
No, not the TV people, but the radio people through Archive on Demand. Since 1995, Steve Melching has been faithfully recording shows from Steve Quill, Bill Brumbaugh, and others. Over coming weeks, every show he's taped from Bill and Steve will be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's not just Bill and Steve, but The Bike Show, Pastor Dan's broadcast, and future hosts as well. For just $6.95 each per month or $20 for the entire package, you can listen anytime you want to these dynamic information resources. That's dramatically less than the cost of a basic satellite or cable TV package, and conversely offers uncut, unadulterated truth and views. Simply go to archiveondemand.com and follow the instructions. It's also a great gift for friends and family who have inspiring minds. archiveondemand.com. Package price subject to change with the addition of future host archives.
You're listening to Reality Radio Network, located at www.realityradionetwork.com. And now back to the Victor Thorne Show with your host, Victor.
This is Victor Thorne, my co-host Lisa Giuliani. We'd like to welcome back Dr. Boyd Graves. Boyd, before we start again, why don't you give everybody your website address and also any other numbers that you would like where they could contact you?
Well, I really appreciate that. Here, now that we're in the federal court, getting through the door, it took us 10 years to do that. Certainly with people's help, we might be able to get this case through a little bit sooner. The website is boydgraves.com, BOYDGRAVES.com, www.boydgraves.com. For people that might be in a position to help, there are good people across the country and the world, and there have been many good people who have already helped and assisted this process. Certainly too many and too numerous to name, but certainly people are beginning to stick out because we're getting some corporate support, I think, developing and coming along the way, and we're grateful for that. But if you can help, call 619-204-5683. That's my cell message phone, and I can get back to you hopefully this evening. So we're moving forward. It's a great day here, and there's another earthquake, and it was a good one.
I'd like to reiterate to the listeners that anybody who's in a position to help Dr. Graves with any donations in this fight, it's a massive fight. It's taken 10 years of his life to get thus far, and anything that anybody can do to help with this legal process monetarily, we really welcome it.
So, Dr. Graves, let me throw a few words at you. 1974, Fort Detrick, Maryland, Fort Detrick Biological Warfare Center. How's that fit in?
Well, sure. I mean, again, you're claiming the year 1974. There were a number of things that happened in 1974 that we're going to show in the case that are concrete with respect to the U.S.'s world population control programs at that point. And boy, Fort Detrick is at the heart of this because Gallo worked there, and this special virus program. I mean, we've got more than enough science evidence, and people need to know this. This program produced a virus there at Fort Detrick called ESP1 virus. It's HIV. The special virus program made the ESP1 virus under electron microscope, and this is what we're going to share with Congresswoman Susan Davis tomorrow, that under electron microscope at 100,000 times magnification, the ESP1 virus that was man-made by the U.S. Special Virus Program is the HIV virus.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, in Africa, 1977, there was a series of smallpox vaccinations that, from my information, says that was the way it was introduced into Africa, through the smallpox vaccinations. Would you concur with that?
Yes, 100%. And let me go further. For those who have the flowchart, as you lay the flowchart document out, you'll see on the far right hand side, you'll see phase 5. I don't know if you guys have it right in front of you.
No,
Victor?
No.
Okay. For those who have the flowchart, on the far right-hand side it says clinical trials, the final phase of this program, to test and to conduct test measures on how effectively they can control it, how effectively they can control this by releasing this mycoplasma, death mycoplasma, because there are other incapacitating mycoplasmas like chronic fatigue syndrome, like it's sort of like what you get from the chemtrail syndrome. It's a debilitating mycoplasma, but it incapacitates. It's not lethal. HIV is lethal. And what you find here is that this federal program lies at the heart of just about a number, all these diseases of unknown etiology. You guys? You're going to find that a lot of stuff has been conducted through this federal program. You're aware that Dr. Garth Nicholson, have you heard of him?
Yes.
Dr. Garth Nicholson in 1994 found that Gulf War illness was HIV with one gene missing.
That's incredible.
Wow.
Well, why don't we gotta really rapid fire these to get everything in by the end of the show. 1978, November 1978, there's a program run by the National Institute of Health and the Centers for Disease Control called Operation Firm Hand, where an experimental hepatitis B vaccine was introduced in New York City by a Polish doctor called Dr. W. Zmunis.
Yeah, well, Zmunis, yes, that's correct. Yeah, I mean, basically, you're just cross-checking to confirm some points that you had articulated previously or have been familiar with previously, and you just want to cross-check, see what's true and what isn't?
Well, I just want to let the listeners see how this was, the actual nuts and bolts of how.
Yeah, well, the nuts and bolts are this. You take that flowchart document. It depicts the research logic of the development of a special virus, and then you get into the makings as to what makes this virus special over other viruses. Well, this virus is special because this virus takes you out, if you would, i.e., it turns off your immune system, and so you're a walking casket. In the phase 5, final phase on the right-hand side, the clinical trials, what they did was they shipped the ESP1 virus, which is HIV. They shipped the 1971 ESP1 virus to vaccine developer Pfizer. Pfizer attached the ESP1 virus as complement to the vaccines that went to Africa, smallpox, and to the experimental hepatitis B vaccine that went to the recruited homosexuals in Manhattan. And many people aren't aware that homosexuals were recruited to take this experimental hepatitis B vaccine. See, we weren't aware of that.
Right. See,
they pulled up trucks. I'm sorry?
They had a very extensive questionnaire, and all they took was homosexual men between the ages of 20 and 40. And
I mean, you're again confirming the program. Maybe it's new for the listeners per se, but if you've written this previously, I guess it isn't. That it is true that homosexuals were chosen as a cohort group of this special virus program in I think it was December 1974 conference at Asilomar Conference in California, Asilomar, A-C-I-L-O-M-A-R, Asilomar Conference, where they picked homosexuals. Then they went out to recruit them, and they only wanted a certain type of homosexual, one who was white, one who was educated, one who was promiscuous, believe it or not, and one who had a job, so that, in essence, they could make sure that they followed up with the second and third booster shots or whatever. But all 1,083 men who took that injection, the experimental hepatitis B shot, died of AIDS.
Right, that's what my records say, is that just a few years later the Center for Disease Control came in, and already just 2 years later, so 64% of the men had already either contacted disease or died from it. And
yeah, the interesting thing, maybe you don't know this, Victor, I guess maybe you do, that you know where the final statistics are? The final statistics of that group of men, the gay men, is being secretly held by the Department of Justice. As to how many of those 1,043 men died, which there's much speculation that all 1,043 died, but that final statistic is being held by the U.S. Department of Justice. And we're hopeful that maybe we can get around to even getting that information in, because our efforts have been to go for truth, to go for the facts, because I personally was interested in dismantling HIV/AIDS out of my body, and if others can join in that process along the way, that's fine. I did take that cure, that Tetrasil, that patent, 5676977. 15 months ago, I took that cure.
And what are the results? What are you finding out?
Well, I'm not speaking from the grave.
How about a man named Waves Forrest? Have you heard of him?
Which one?
His name is Waves Forrest. He wrote an article called Designer Diseases. AIDS is a biological and psychological warfare?
Well, clearly, the psychological warfare is well, certainly for me, is it's more harm than the physical warfare at this point, because the scarlet letter of HIV/AIDS is such that it really doesn't matter how much of the U.S. documents that we uncover and bring to some people. They are still going to think that somehow that it doesn't matter, and it's okay for the government to make HIV and AIDS, that your behavior should be what is ultimately the most important, and it doesn't matter if your government tries to kill you. Well, we disagree with that.
One of the most amazing things on your website was that you say that by June of 1977, the government had produced 15,000 gallons of the AIDS virus.
Well, that's a misstatement actually by me.
Okay.
I did that, transposed it, if you would, to gallons, because it just thought it made it seem like it would be more understandable for lay people, for us. Actually, the report says is that they made 60,000 liters.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when I mentioned to people that you were going to be on our show tonight and explained a little bit what we're going to be talking about, they have this look of just incredulity to it, that it's inconceivable that our government or the World Health Organization or anybody could be involved in such an atrocious practice. What would you say to someone like that to convince them that this is a reality, that this has taken place and it is occurring?
Well, it's pretty simple at this point, again, as it is in the lawsuit now. Now that we're in the door, wow, I feel like a whole burden is off of my head. We're holding official U.S. documents. We're not sure what anybody else is holding.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really expect the court to hold the U.S. government accountable?
I expect the court of public opinion to hold the U.S. government accountable. We have done so in the past.
I would agree with that because the court system doesn't tend to, I don't know.
Well, I'm saying we've done so in the past, and we can do so again. In essence, and in actuality, this is akin to the human subject experimentation that we experienced when we found out about the Tuskegee. And again, you find that they were working on people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And in essence, you find that beginning in 1932, they began testing this Visna on the sheep in Iceland. As they began Tuskegee, they began testing HIV/AIDS. And we should be apologized to, just as they were apologized to for Tuskegee. Tuskegee got syphilis and lingered until they died. Tragic deaths as they permeated the syphilis through their families in the fashions that happened. But the same is true with HIV/AIDS. That if 30% of HIV/AIDS is from a 1932 strain of Nazi Visna, we need our apology, just like Tuskegee. We need that apology today. People need to, the good people, because there are bad people, everywhere, apparently, and many of them apparently are in Washington, but people who are good and want to come on board, now that there is corroborated evidence, if you yourself are uncertain about the information, I challenge people to take your library challenge. Call your local library. Ask to speak to the interlibrary loan person. Ask for them to look into the World Catalog database. And then tell them to enter Special Virus Cancer Program. And believe it or not, there are 8 references to the federal program that made AIDS in the public library system of the United States of America. Now, take the challenge.
This information's out there.
It's in the public library system. Take the challenge. Special Virus Cancer Program in the World Catalog database. And make the effort to look it up as opposed to scratching your head and turning the radio off or turning the computer off because this information can't come through. An African and a monkey had to have been the beginning. And that's not true. Pardon me?
What about the media? Is the media covering this? This is a huge story.
The media is covering the program. Our press has been abridged. We are constitutionless.
Incredible. How does the Hershey Medical Center fit into this? Where we're located in State College, Pennsylvania, it's only 2 hours away. You say that every year at the Hershey Medical Center, all of these AIDS creators or doctors or scientists meet for an annual progress report.
Yeah, it was the centralized intelligence of this program where Hershey became the hub. Hershey, in essence, is the the Hegelian Center, the Hegelian Dialectic Center. Hershey. The professor there in Pennsylvania, prolific in the development of HIV, is Dr. Fred Rapp of Penn State University.
How do you spell his last name?
R-A-P-P, Fred Rapp.
Okay. And he's right here at Penn State?
Relevant to the development of HIV/AIDS, Dr. Fred Rapp was a pivotal player in the development of HIV/AIDS, along with Dr. Alan S. Rabson, who we've already identified in the paperwork in the federal case. But Fred Rapp, in this sense, Dr. Rapp was the host for this program.
Okay, very good.
And not only that, but Penn State University, although every progress report says that we're preparing this report for the annual meetings at Hershey Medical Center, Hershey Medical Center has no records of these meetings.
They don't, huh?
No, and Dr. Rapp would not talk to me. So we see Dr. Rapp's name prominently in these progress reports in the development of HIV/AIDS. And here's our position. We believe that Congress has to issue a private relief bill, to me, to be able to litigate the people's case as it requires in this issue. But we have found the wellspring of the genesis of the AIDS, and it is this federal program, the U.S. Special Virus Program. And mentioning Congress, we've got Congressman Tim Ryan. He replaced Congressman James Traficant in my hometown district there. Congressman Tim Ryan today made a public commitment on the air to follow and ensure that there is a review of this federal virus program. So we're making movement in both the courts and Congress. And, you know, we see Goliath on the back of his hills. And Goliath deserves to be on the back of his hills in light of the fact, as it relates to me personally, that, you know, nearly 11 years ago, you know, I tested positive for HIV/AIDS. And, you know, maybe only thought for, you know, maybe a day or something that it might have been my behavior. All of the evidence points to my government, and even more so in my particular individual case. And I didn't know if we would get into this tonight or not, but the conclusive evidence that the United States developed HIV/AIDS is the fact that they also developed a means of dispensing HIV/AIDS in a fashion that, like a poison dart gun, so that you wouldn't know that they dispensed it. And that language is contained in a October 1967 top secret memo from the Central Intelligence Agency that was declassified. And also you note that in Dr. Lynn Horowitz's book, the second point of great significance is this microbial inoculator. Have you heard that term before? The United States developed, beginning in October of 1967, a poison dart gun, in essence, a way to dispense something like HIV/AIDS. It can give you HIV/AIDS at a distance of 100 yards through your clothes without your knowledge.
Wow.
And without any trace back to the poison dart gun. That, and you say, Ed Graves, Dr. Graves, that's incredible, right? Huh?
Yeah.
Well, you know, oddly enough, that's in the congressional record as well. It is the 1975 Senate Select Intelligence Committee hearings on CIA activities. 1975. And what happened at that hearing was that Colby was CIA director at that time.
That was probably the church committee.
Yeah, it was the church committee, exactly. I say, so here we are corroborating. Isn't that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the church committee.
Yeah, a lot of those CIA dirty secrets came out in that.
Well, he pulled one of the microbial inoculators out. And they took a picture of it. So we have a picture of the device that we're talking about. But here's how your government described it. It can give you can dispense an element at a distance of 100 yards through your clothes without your knowledge and no way to trace it back. That's what the microbial inoculation program of the United States is. It is a way of transmitting HIV/AIDS in a stealth fashion, so that some of us are genuinely, and I do mean this, some of us are genuinely innocent of this man-made virus.
Who's dispensing it? Specifically, like the military?
Isn't that a question for your Congress?
Who do you think?
Well, it's a CIA weapon. This is a CIA document from But again, you have the confirmation from the Colby when he pulled one of these out in 1975 that here is a way to give somebody HIV/AIDS without their knowledge.
Well, let me Let me read a quote to you that shows the magnitude of how this disease has spread in Africa. It's from a Dr. Basil Wainwright, who's a 3-time Nobel Peace Prize nominee. He says, if AIDS is not deactivated within 66 years, there will be no blacks in Africa. Dr. Graves?
Yeah.
Yes. What do you think about that? That really lays the magnitude.
Did you get that off my site?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was giving his text. God, Basil anyway. Yeah, he's but he's kind of a quirk also, in the sense that his intelligence background is too questionable for me. So it seems that, although accurate in this sense, that we're killing 200 black people an hour in Africa. Are you aware of that?
I know it's phenomenal.
200 people an hour. And it isn't just black people, and I know that, and I tell people that all the time. It isn't just black people. But right now, 200 people an hour die. You guys, a plane went down with 200 white people on it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then a plane went down with 200 white people on it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The airline industry would be closed by 2:15. Correct? Correct or not?
Yes, I agree.
Right. So here, we are complacent. We are killing 200 people an hour.
It's reprehensible.
And we are complacent. And then, I will say this. For all of the L's that have been slung at the messenger, as it was, now it shall always be. It has never been the messenger. It has always been the message. We have found the federal program at the heart of the genesis of HIV and AIDS.
Well, when you appeared at the African American AIDS Conference in 2000, 2 or 3 years ago, and presented this information, what was their reaction? Because I speak with a lot of black people in my line of work, and it seems like all of them are aware of it. They are aware of this information. They know about it, so why isn't the black community getting more riled up about this?
Well, the black community has gotten caught in a vice grip for a number of reasons. A large portion of it isn't really our fault. By tricking us to think that AIDS was a good thing when only white homosexuals were dying, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least in this country.
Well, you're talking about black people, so by tricking us to think that AIDS is a good thing, only white homosexuals are dying and intravenous drug users, so don't worry about it. Well, what happened was, it allowed the black ministers to get the pulpit and say, God's rap, that AIDS is from God, and you see, I told you so. That, you know what I'm saying? The black ministers went there. Now, black women are the fastest growing group coming down with HIV and AIDS, and you don't hear a peep from the black community. You don't even hear a peep from the black community. Even though they have the cure out there, patent number 5676977. I didn't hear Mr. Farrakhan say a word about the cure for AIDS, but you get sassed down about your behavior anytime a black person gets to the pulpit or to the podium. We need new leadership. Certainly we need new biological leadership from the African American community. I don't necessarily see that coming.
Well, I wish you were one of those leaders. I wish you could get to the forefront and somehow
So do I.
get this message out even more prominently.
Well, this is not politics for me, and this is not charisma. People hate the fact, that you have someone, the bull in the China store syndrome, and it's not well received, and it leaves for a lot of solo time. I'm asking others that might be in a position to help to, again, leave me a message at 619-293-0273. We're going to continue tomorrow with the Congress and the courts to see just how far we're going to go. But the central question this evening, again, is that it is game, set, and match. The VISNA sequences, the Icelandic sheep disease sequences in the nucleotide sequences of HIV are just overwhelming to show conclusively that this is a product of recombination. And even the progress reports of this program state on page 39 that the VISNA disease has not yet been seen in human disease. So the United States has another problem to show that VISNA appeared in human disease prior to 1971. They cannot do so.
Well, Dr. Graves, if you had a crystal ball and you could look into it, what do you think would happen with your court case? What's your prediction?
Well, the court case is kind of like secondary almost at this moment, because the victory is even just allowing us in the front door of the federal court. We have already won. I mean, we've got all these are U.S. documents. These are not Boyd Graves' creations. These are, the flowchart is a 1971 blueprint to make HIV that was authored by Drs. Luke Reese and Dr. Dick Rauscher. These are the kinds of things that the people have. This is the information that we're bringing forth, because I am not perfect, and make no mistake about that. But I do believe in truth, and I do believe in fact, and when push comes to shove, I fall more on the good than the bad, and we believe that the United States' behavior must be accounted for before that of any individuals. And so we're going to push very, very hard to have the United States account for this secret federal virus program that paralleled the onset of HIV and AIDS, and then suddenly ended.
Dr. Graves, will you keep us posted on what happens tomorrow?
Well, every day, and I appreciate that, because, I am feeling the pressures of, they're stopping my mail, delaying it to such a point that it almost is fruitless to have it come, and no computer. The fax machine today, I just found out that it's somehow been tampered with, so that my fax has come out and there's nothing but a blank on the other side, and you're receiving it.
Well, what we do is we could post these updates on our message board on our site.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's what I'm saying. That the number here, again, 619-204-5683, and I could use some help, of course, and but we're not going to stop. We're going to get back up in the saddle tomorrow if I get it tomorrow, and we're going to continue to bring this information to light, the documentation of the federal program that made HIV and AIDS. It is so very, very important for all of us.
I think a victory would be Dan Rather finally having to admit it on the CBS News one night.
Well, on CBS News, since you bring it up, and I know we're running a little late here, or close to the end, but September 21, 2000, write that date down, September 21, 2000, CBS Evening News, they showed the mycoplasmas in like holographic form, three-dimensional color things and everything, and it said it was a new discovery.
Wow.
Okay,
on September 21, 2000, the segment was called Virus Armor, and now they have, the videotape has vanished from September 21 out of CBS archives, and the audio tape has been doctored.
1 minute, Victor.
Okay, we have 1 minute left, Dr. Graves. So
well, that's important there. The CBS videotape is missing from September 21, where they had mycoplasmas as a new science discovery. Well, we alerted them that mycoplasmas are on the cover of the U.S. Special Virus Program. Then now the videotape is missing of the CBS September 21 Evening News broadcast. And the audio tape has been doctored from this Virus Armor segment.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Graves. Your site can be found at www.boydgraves.com. We want to thank you very much for being on our show tonight.
Dr. Graves, thank you so much.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say speedy recovery to my roommate, Harry Bronstein, who's recovering in the VA.
You're in our prayers.
Super. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Graves.
Good evening.
Good night.